So I've been thinking a lot about Overwatch lately, and today I want to talk about an opinion that I've kind of been growing over the past while, and that is that the way the Overwatch has been made kind of pushes a lot of players to quit the game. And the way that there are no restrictions and no role queues and really nothing like that, while being very free form and while allowing a lot of people to do, essentially whatever they want, also can hurt the game in the long run, and why at this point a lot of people are eventually kind of quitting because of a lot of these problems. Now, I do want to mention that, yeah, the game is still going strong. Yeah, I still am personally enjoying it. But I feel like at this point, since we've kind of evolved the meta, since we've kind of evolved the way we're playing, and mainly a lot of players have kind of evolved their mindset, I think that there could be a few changes. And as well, I kind of just want to go over why the way that the game is made supports a lot of players eventually getting very frustrated at it, just because how the patches affect the players. With that all said though, guys, let's get started. And today I do want to mention that this is completely my own opinion, so please take it with a big grain of salt, and if you have your own opinion, make sure to leave that down in the comment section down below, maybe why you love the way that the game has been set up. Now, straight off to the beginning right here, I'm going to say that one big problem about not having any role queue and not having any hero restrictions and not forcing a 2-2-2 or something kind of like that, maybe like a 1-1-1 triple flex, I don't know. By not enforcing any of those, it's kind of put players into a really hard position, and that is that players have no way to predict the future, and it's very hard to choose what to do now as a player of this game, especially a competitive one, without knowing what's going to happen in a month or 2 months or 3 months. And I think this really has created a big problem for a lot of players and made them just kind of rage quit out of it. Now, here's a really good example. So let's say that you're playing in Season 7 of Overwatch Competitive, and, you're playing Tracer, and you really enjoy Tracer, and, you're also deciding to pick up maybe a backup like Genji, and maybe even another backup like Soldier 76. So you have quite a few backups, you're doing your best, you pick your main role, you're deciding to go for DPS, and you start grinding. You start doing really well, playing again and again and again, start climbing up, but as time eventually catches up with you, well, you get into Season 10 Brigida meta, and now there's triple support. Now there's really barely any DPS that can be played in the game, and now you're just kind of screwed, because the way that the game has been balanced isn't really around keeping a generalized meta where, everybody can play a lot of different heroes. It's more of a balance to just kind of change up the meta. And what this has put a lot of DPS players into, especially in our current meta, is a situation where they hoped that the future would slightly benefit DPS, or at least allow a lot of them to be playable, and now their gamble has gone south, and a lot of them are quitting. Now, I'm not going to say that this is even, a horrible design choice. It may be, it may be not. I don't know. That's really up for you to decide, allowing for metas to be so much different, so freeform. But I think one consequence that we can't forget to include is the fact that it will create a lot of frustration in players. You can't simply say, hey, you're just dumb for not wanting to switch to this new meta and not wanting to play these new heroes. I mean, I guess you can say that, but that's not going to make these players any happier, and that's not going to make them want to switch it up. And I think overall, the way that Blizzard kind of structured this does make it very frustrating, because you never know what you want to do, and you never know what you should be doing, because it could change up at any point. Overall, it feels like a lot of the times Blizzard's just kind of going with the flow, which again, could be alright, but I think as time goes on and as new metas evolve and then get thrown away and then evolve and then get thrown away, it kicks out a lot of players, and essentially every single patch kicks out, let's just say a random number, like 1% of players, really makes them not happy with the game, and then that keeps repeating, and eventually you start to see a half-decent chunk of your community being either out of the community or just being very frustrated with it. And I think that's kind of what has eventually happened today, because, we've had triple support, triple DPS, triple tank, and in all these metas, essentially somebody's screwed. And I think by not applying any restrictions and by not really trying to make the game stay somewhat similar, it has made a lot of players become, again, extremely frustrated. And again, it can be pretty fun if you like completely diverse metas, but a lot of the times you get into the game because you like a certain meta, and by completely swapping it up, it almost completely changes the pace of the game, which again could be fine, but for a lot of players it is, somewhat hectic. It's somewhat annoying. I don't know. I think that's just one thing I wanted to mention about this. Now, as well, another thing I want to say is that there's really no way to prepare for balance patches, and this attaches to the previous point. Even your backup plans, as I was talking about earlier, are just kind of useless, and overall I think I really think that Overwatch should kind of tell what its plans are for the future, tell what they want to be trying to doing. If there's new characters that are probably going to do something, maybe tell the community how it's going to work out. I think that could really help. But as it is right now, yeah, that is another just piece of the pie that's kind of frustrating about this. Now, something else I want to mention right here is that I feel like, doing this the way that they've done it can be fine in a lot of games. Let's say League of Legends, for example, for the first, 5 or 6 seasons, you can kind of just pick whatever you wanted to. I mean, yeah, you were eventually segregated into your roles after season 2, but still you could pick a lot of different heroes and kind of do fine. And as the metas evolved and swapped, you could pick up a lot of new heroes, keep changing it up, do whatever. I played League for a huge amount of time. It's really fun. But I feel like in a game like Overwatch, it can't quite have the luxury of a game like League of Legends, because as the metas change in League, there's still always going to be top lane. There's still always going to be mid lane. There's still always going to be bot lane. And they always almost do the same thing. Top lanes by themselves. And while sometimes there's a bruiser and sometimes there's a tank, they're still doing a pretty similar role. Jungle is always ganking around. Sometimes they're really fast at doing the jungle camp. Sometimes they take forever, but they're always ganking. Mid lane, it's always a mage or an assassin, so you can kind of get ready for that. And, bot lane always does a lot of damage with far range and has the support, so you can kind of be ready for that. Again, a game like Overwatch doesn't really have that. There really is no set way to prepare for the future, and I think especially for people that want to get very competitive, they want to pick a main, they want to pick a main role even to play, and in a game like, League of Legends, you can do that, I think, a lot easier. I think as well, even if the meta switches up, I mean, you can easily still stay as a top lane main. Let's say that you like Malphite in one season, but, you have to switch it up for the next season, so you have to pick a less tanky character, but still that's, pretty tanky, so you go for someone like Trundle. Those are just 2 random characters. In a game like Overwatch, you can't really do that. If the meta changes a lot, in a lot of cases, you have to either go from a main tank to an off tank, and that's kind of it. And I feel like the problem about Overwatch right now is that it's trying to do something that I think would work if they had a ton of heroes, consistently swap up the meta, and give a lot of people a good chance to play a lot of different characters, and enjoy themselves. And yeah, I think that would be fine, especially if there's more specific roles. But Overwatch in its freeform nature, with the lack of a huge, variety of different characters, I think does kind of hurt it, and it makes so that in a lot of cases you can't really find a hero that you like in the new meta. You can't really find a tank that's anything like your previous tank, and I think most other games don't really have that problem, just because maybe they're larger hero pool or something like that. But especially in Overwatch, if you like playing Zarya like I did from season 1 to 3 and then she's not meta, then you're kind of screwed. There's no one really like her in the game. There's no way to really fit into the meta anymore. And that, again, does sometimes happen in other games, but I think it especially happens very often in Overwatch, and that's why it's kind of expedited this process compared to some other ones. Now, another thing I'm going to say here is that it seems like Blizzard is pretty fine with, half the cast just kind of not being very good at all for a few months. And while switching the meta, I think, is cool, again, it is interesting, it is kind of fun to watch, it does, again, kind of switch completely how the game's being played, and that angers people, and that makes people want to not really play anymore. And again, I'm fine with the meta eventually switching, but I think in a lot of cases, even it just, kind of happens too fast. A lot of the times they do just about 0 changes, and then they plop down a huge amount of changes at once. The whole meta swaps, and, it's cool to see all the new different metas and the new different characters being played, but at the same time, for all the people that maybe don't like to play a new triple or quad tank meta, it's not that fun at all. And Overwatch, again, has always had a really big problem with this, and I wish that they could figure out a way to play around this, and maybe they can. Maybe that's just kind of how the game works, and maybe it's not the developer's fault, but that is a problem that I've really seen happening with this game that, is kind of unique to it, at least from what I've seen. Now, one final thing I'm going to say here is that I really think that the game is fun, and I think that it is honestly pretty well designed. And even though it is kind of annoying to get from meta to meta, if you are a lot flexible as a player, there's a lot for you in this game. What I'm going to say here, though, is that I kind of wish that the game was designed to be flexible, but a little bit more rigid. I think at this point, it just honestly has too much freedom, which, more freedom is always a good thing, I think a lot of people think. But as it is right now, in a lot of cases, you're just getting terrible team comps every single game, and that's no fun at all. And I wish that they'd add something to help with that, and something to maybe make so that, while the metas will swap, a lot of the heroes will stay relatively viable and still will do about the same role. As, yeah, I think you can't just keep switching up a game so much 2 years into development. People are kind of getting sick of that. Of course, you still need new changes, you still need new fixes, you still need to make new characters different so that the game is still enjoyable and fresh, but I think they could do it a little bit differently and get a lot better of a result. Overall, again, I think that the game sometimes can be random, can be frustrating, and sometimes the balance, it's not the best to deal with, but it still is a really fun game. And in general, I hope that they can work on some of these fixes for the future. I think for the past while, they've been mainly focusing on making the game as fun as possible, adding as much cool stuff as possible, and I think it really does show. And it has been an extremely, extremely profitable and fun game to play, but I hope that adding maybe a little bit more, mainly just to competitive, and maybe just swapping up the system for like a really big change, that would be awesome. But anyways, that's all I had to say today. Again, as always, I just like to make videos talking what's on my mind, and this was something that I was really thinking about. Do hero restrictions hurt or help the game, and where should the line be? What should they be doing? All of that. As well, as always, I still do support a guild system. Think that would be awesome. I still support the idea that we could maybe have less penalties for playing in a big group. Those would be awesome, but, you know, those I guess will be for another video. As always, though, guys, thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure you leave a like. Subscribe if you want to see more videos like this in the future, just about my thoughts of the game. And hit that, notification bell if you want to see more stuff as well. As always, guys, though, thank you all for watching, and have a wonderful day.